Hey everybody, I am Stephanie Williams with Festive Creations by Stephanie, where we inspire and mentor others as well as design beautiful things for your home. This video is just for you that have recently purchased a wreath kit from our store at festivecreationsbystephanie.com. So if you purchased one of our wreath kits, you purchased it in one of two ways. You purchased a kit with a frame or without a frame. The tutorial is going to be one to show you how to make a wreath with the no frame kit. So if you bought the wreath kit with no frame, I'm going to show you what you can do with that. So let's zoom down here and let's talk about what you got in your kit. So in my kit, you would have gotten a roll of mesh, 10" by 10 yards mesh. You would have gotten 3 rolls of ribbon. You may have gotten 2 rolls of 2.5, 1 roll of 2.5" ribbon, some 1.5" ribbon. So you're going to get 3 rolls of ribbon in your kit. You're also going to get one of our signs. So I actually brought out 2 different signs because they face different directions. So I'm going to talk about that as we work on our wreath kit. So no matter if you got the vertical sign or the horizontal sign, this process will work perfectly for you. So let's set those aside for just a moment and talk about the tools you're going to need and some additional things that do not come in the kit. So the wreath kit with no frame, you are going to need a frame. So whether you use a frame from Hobby Lobby, this one comes from Dollar Tree, or wherever you may purchase a frame. This is a 14" wreath ring, and it was purchased from Dollar Tree. Or you may have gotten a frame similar to this that already has the twist ties on it. And some of the local places that carry frames like this, especially during the seasonal time of year, are Hobby Lobby is where I can typically find frames like this. And of course, these frames are also available in our store at festivecreationsbystephanie.com. So we're going to be using the Dollar Tree frame for our video today. Using the Dollar Tree frame, you're also going to need some pipe cleaners or chenille stems. You're going to need a good pair of scissors, and you're going to need a staple gun. I also brought out some wire cutters or bolt cutters actually, and I use a mesh cutter. It is a rotary wheel by Fiskars. You do not have to have this tool. You can use your scissors just fine. This is going to be used to cut the mesh. And then I'm also going to be using in our tutorial today the Bodabra. So the Bodabra I have found to be the most simplest and user-friendly bow maker out of the 3 different bow makers that I use and I own. I do not make bows by hand. I do much better by using a bow maker. And because this is the easiest one to use, we're going to be using the Bodabra today. So let's get started. So to begin with, we're going to need a minimum of 12 pipe cleaners for this Dollar Tree 14" frame. So we're going to pull out our pipe cleaners. Oh, one more tool I did forget to mention is that you will need a glue gun for this project as well. So it doesn't have to be an industrial glue gun like I have. However, again, I think Dollar Tree even sells glue guns, Dollar General, Walmart. You can get glue guns anywhere. Cold temp, hot temp, mini glue gun, normal glue gun. All right, so let me zoom in just a little bit more here and show you what we're going to do. So on this frame, it has 4 wires, the 2 outer wires and the 2 inner wires. What I'm doing is I'm going to take our pipe cleaner and I'm going to wrap it around the top 2 wires right here where this joint is. And I'm going to pull tightly as I give it a good twist, and then I'm going to twist it again. So I'm going to do that at every joint around the inner 2 wires on this frame. Give it a good tug, twist, and give it another twist. So we're going to do that at every joint on the top of this frame. So 1 at each of the joints. Now we're going to go in between those 2 pipe cleaners on the outer rim, on the outer 2, and we're going to put a pipe cleaner right there. And repeat that same process, except the only difference is on the outer frame is we're doing it in between the joints. So your ring, when you get done, should look very similar to this. 1 pipe cleaner around the 2 inner rings at each joint, and then 1 pipe cleaner in between those 2 on the 2 bottom rings. So where the glue gun comes in is right now. So I'm actually going to turn this over. And y'all, I used to skip this step because it just seemed like it was, I don't know, unnecessary. However, it is very necessary. So I'm going to put a little spot of glue right there on the edge of that pipe cleaner and touch the wire too. So it's going to touch the pipe cleaner and the wire. And the reason that we're going to do this on each one of these pipe cleaners, and actually I do both rings. I'm going to glue it to both rings. And the reason we do that is because even though we give it a good tight twist when we add it to the wire, it still will move around, and it is a pain and frustrating to chase your pipe cleaners and try to keep those in place. So just putting that little spot of glue right there and allowing it to dry will really decrease your frustration. And of course, this is one of those optional things. If you choose to skip it, that's fine. Even though it might take me an additional 60 seconds to go and glue these down, to me, it's worth it in the long run. All right. So we'll give that a second for that glue to set up. And so I won't turn that over quite yet because I don't want to get glue on my table. While we're waiting for that to set up, we're going to take our sign and we're going to add pipe cleaners to our signs. 4 of them, and we're going to attach them to the back of our sign. So the signs that you get in my wreath kit are a good thickness. So look at how thick that is. Some signs that you may get from other suppliers, whether it's a handmade sign, etc., are always that thick. And so be cautious when you do this next piece that you don't want the, we're going to staple some pipe cleaners to this, and you don't want the staples to go all the way through the sign. So if that's the case, if you're worried that it might go through, the staple might be too long for the sign, you can just take a scrap piece of ribbon and fold it up. Not this one, I'm just going to use this for an example. So So just a scrap piece of ribbon, fold it up a few times and put that under your pipe cleaner so that when you staple this, it doesn't push all the way down into your sign. You can also use a piece of that foam, that craft foam, anything to help lift it up, even just fabric. But if you're not sure, test an area that would not ruin the sign. So I would not immediately staple into the back of a sign unless I was very confident that staple was not going through, and I never, ever, ever use a staple larger than 1/4 inch, ever. So we're gonna turn this over, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some pipe cleaners, because this is going to allow us later on to attach this sign to our frame that we have already started. So I use a 1/4 inch staple, and I staple it twice, and I typically do all 4 corners. And I don't do on the edge of the sign. See, you see how I'm like 1 inch in on both sides? So I don't do it directly on the edge. I bring it in about 1 inch. Now, if you turn this over, none of those staples came through on that sign. Again, only 1/4 inch staples. Now we're going to take our glue gun and put just one more spot of glue right there over those staples. Why, you ask? Because sometimes those staples can get stressed. So when I say stressed, I mean, so the pipe cleaners can cause stress when you attach it, and you don't want the staples popping out and then the sign coming detached from your wreath frame. So I just put a little spot of glue, so I'm double mounting it. So I'm using the staples and the glue to kind of secure it. Also, another piece of wisdom is don't chintz on your pipe cleaners, because depending on how thick your mesh is, you don't want to fight with trying to attach this to your wreath frame if you've got half the size. You just use the whole pipe cleaner. You're only talking 1/2 cent maybe for one of these. So just go ahead and use an entire pipe cleaner, and then we'll cut off the excess when we get done. All right, our sign is ready. And so again, just a comparison, it doesn't matter which sign you have. If you have the vertical or the horizontal, the same thing applies. You're gonna do 1 in each corner. Also, I typically will cut off this jute roping, unless, of course, it actually fits into my design. Look at what I just did. Unless it fits into my design, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. I'm just gonna attach that back and give it a couple of good twists there, and a couple of good twists down here, and reattach that. And I'm probably gonna give it one more spot of glue, because I don't want that coming apart. All right, so now this glue is gonna set up, and we're gonna go right back. So let's get our wreath frame. Now let's get our mesh ready. So our mesh in your kit probably included a 10-inch mesh. Some of my kits include 21 inch, but this is gonna be a demonstration with the 10-inch. This is a 10-inch by 10-yard mesh. Let me get that lined up correctly here. Look, I'm using, let me zoom out just a little bit here. I'm using my Bodabra as a weight, a paper weight, so to speak, on my mesh, because it will roll right back at me. So I'm gonna hold down this end. If you don't have a rotary cutter, it's okay. Just use your scissors. And I'm going to cut this at 30 inches. So I need 12 of these at 30 inches. So there's one. 2. So we now have 12 of these cut between 29 and 30 inches. Just don't go over 30 inches. And also, if you get down to the end of the roll and it's not an exact number, if it's 28 inches, if it's, don't sweat it, because that is not going to make or break your design when you get finished. So we have now got 12 of these cut at an average of 29 to 30 inches. So I'm actually gonna put those back down here out of our way, and we're just gonna work with one for right now. So you notice how it curls up naturally? We're gonna take that curl and turn it upside down so it's curling under, right? And I'm gonna use my Bodabra again as a paperweight. And I'm gonna set that right on the end. So I'm gonna call it 30-inch strip. We're gonna lay it out flat. And I'm going to go right up the center. So right in the center of my mesh, I'm gonna take my fingers and pinch it together and just walk this up. So I'm using my fingers and I'm pinching, pulling, and the whole time I'm holding on to where I began. So I'm just pulling it together, pull, 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 and as we get closer to my paperweight here, that now created a ruffle. So I have my fingers in between there and it created a cute little ruffle, right? So when we take our wreath frame, inside of one of these pipe cleaners, and I start on the bottom row, we're gonna take our ruffle and put it right in the center there. So now I have my pipe cleaner on both sides of my ruffle. I'm gonna pull that very tightly, give it a couple of good twists, and we've now just added our first ruffle to our wreath. So it should look something similar to that. So I'm gonna repeat that process, and we're gonna put one on all of the lower edge first. So the outer rims first. Then we'll come back and repeat that around the inner rings. And the reason that we do the outer edge first is because otherwise you're going to be lifting those up and moving them out of your way to get the bottom one in. And with Deco mesh, you want to handle it as little as possible. So the more you touch it, the more you play with it, move it, etc., all mesh will fray, but the more you move it, the higher chance you have of it fraying. So I'm gonna do this again, and then we'll do a fast motion. So I'm gonna go slowly. I'm going right up the center, taking my fingers and just pulling it towards me, walking it towards me. And also, I did want to mention that you notice on my table, I have this nice little cutting mat. It is not a requirement. You don't need to go out and buy a cutting mat. If you have a ruler, a tape measure, yardstick, that's really all you need. And especially if you're using scissors to cut your mesh. So this particular mat, and I'll leave a link to all of the tools in the comments below, but this particular mat is made specifically for like that rotary cutter that we use. And of course it has the marked numbers on it. so that I can measure easily without having to bring out the tape measure or yardstick or ruler. All right, so let's show you. So we've just completed the outer ridge only. So the outer perimeter of this, and look at how full this is already. So when we get done, we don't want to be able to see this mesh frame or this wire frame through our mesh. So let's go ahead and do the top row. So I'm going to bring my pipe cleaners forward because I've kind of buried them down here, so that as I make my ruffles, I can easily access them. And now we're ready to start adding ruffles to the top of our frame. All right. Now we go to the next set of pipe cleaners, which is the top rim of our frame, and start adding the next row. So I'm working my mesh around so it's laying flat against the previous row. So now we've added the top row here, and see how much thicker it's getting already. So we're going to repeat that all the way around the top. Okay, now we have finished our wreath base. The fun begins. Not that this wasn't fun already, but look at how full that is. And again, on the back side, this is what it looks like. So all of my pipe cleaners are still attached. They didn't shift on me. And from the front side, you cannot see that metal frame through there. So let's go and add some ribbon.